What's up, everyone? We're here for another episode of Locked On Bucks. We've got 2 days off until Game 5. I don't know what it is with these breaks, although maybe any day, every 24-hour period maybe is good for Khris Middleton. We're going to discuss that a little bit later on this show. We're also just going to sum up where we're at in this first-round series. We're going to talk about Giannis so far against the Bulls. We're going to show a bit of love to Bobby Bifocals. Shout out to Marcus Johnson, who I believe was the originator of that nickname. We're going to talk about Bobby Portis. And as I said, wrap up where we are in this first round series. Let's go.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. I'm your host, Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday and on the weekends for post-game pods and also from my work over at ESPN. Joining me from the Bucks Radio Network, Justin Garcia. We thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first watch or first listen of every day, and particularly for those on YouTube who are getting involved in the comments section. I'm always responding there, and it's from time to time there is some very wild takes that have been thrown out there in the YouTube comments, but we love it. We love the interaction, and we're close to 3,000 subscribers. I've been saying this for a while. We're just very close, 2.95K subscribers. So if you haven't jumped on YouTube yet, you can do that, and you can see me and Justin here talking about the Bucks. Justin, as I said, about a 48-hour gap here before Game 5. I think we're all hoping that this is the last game of the series, but it is interesting because the team that Milwaukee will play, if they get through this series, is already done. And that is perhaps what we didn't expect with this Boston-Brooklyn series. I actually predicted that the Celtics would win that series in 5. They didn't even need a Game 5. They've wrapped it up in 4. So the Celtics are officially now waiting for the Bucks, we think, to wrap up this series. We'll see if it extends to a Game 6. But that's not great news if you're Khris Middleton and if you're the Bucks, hoping to get this man back for the next round in the playoffs if they advance.
You picked the Celtics to win a 5 before the series started?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm not one to brag, but I did pick the Celtics in 4. I mean, Nets are not a good team.
You set me up like you were shocked that I picked Celtics in 5, but no, you just brought that up because you wanted to brag yourself. Okay, fine, Justin.
They're in a weird spot though, because it was kind of like what everybody was saying about Brooklyn going into the play-in tournament, or a handful of people, I should say, were saying about, well, 7th seed isn't really great if you're the Nets. Like, would you rather play the Heat than you would the Celtics or the Bucks? And what if you just tank into the 9-10 line? You're playing with fire if you do that. And if you're the Bucks, the best thing possible is that this series that you're in goes 7 games, because that means you're playing the Bulls until Sunday. So Game 1 of your series against the Celtics would start probably Tuesday. So you can buy a little more time and try to talk yourself into the possibility that Khris Middleton could be back relatively soon. But I think we all assume the Bucks are going to take care of business on Wednesday. And I think that means, if I had to guess, I would say Sunday will be Game 1 of that second round series then, since both those teams were scheduled to play Sunday. That was reserved for their Game 7s. And, as of right now, the only other games that would have been played that day that looks like it could be a possibility is Game 7 between the Timberwolves and the Grizzlies. So I would guess Game 1 would be Sunday. And, you do the math, Game 2 would probably be Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, which you're right at, I think, 2 weeks at that point. But that's, again, and I've seen a few people wisely point it out, I want to caution people that I think everybody is assuming 2 weeks and Khris Middleton's going to be back. I don't know that that's the case, and I would lean towards that probably not being the case, that 2 weeks is just the reevaluation period. But even still, let's say he comes back at 2 weeks. The way things are headed, that means he's missing at least 2 games in this series, if not 3.
Yeah, and firstly, I will just say, I think maybe it was a little in jest, but when you say the best case scenario is Bucks Bulls going to Game 7, that is not the best case scenario.
We're not serious, yeah.
That is not the best case scenario, to be clear. The best case scenario is you wrap up this series, give everyone else as much rest as you possibly can for a potential game one here, if it's the case. And again, I expect the Bulls will, they'll try and extend this series and get back to the United Center. So we'll see what happens in that game there. But I agree. I mean, we really are looking at the scenario that because that other series is shortened, because of where the series with the Bucks and Bulls are, it is a reality that Khris Middleton is potentially in a situation where he isn't going to play in the second round at all. And that is a disastrous scenario for the Bucks. And I mentioned some of the wild YouTube comments we have. This was the most predictable thing that was going to happen. The Bucks beat a Bulls team who, let's be honest, they should be beating a Bulls team even without Khris Middleton. You play defense. And naturally, there's some comments there suggesting that the Bucks are better without Khris Middleton, and when he returns, he should come off the bench and all that sort of stuff. But which is laughable. But anyway, we'll see what happens here moving forward in this series. But let's be real, the Celtics look awesome, and the way that they're defending right now, their ability to defend across multiple positions. We'll get to that series if it happens later on. But the Celtics look great. The Nets look awful. I don't think anyone's sad to see the Nets eliminated, given what all the stories around them all season long, the fact that people still assumed that they were going to be a team that was going to win a title. I don't think anyone's sad about it, but it is a little shocking to see Kevin Durant go out like this and have a series where he wasn't Kevin Durant.
Good. Yeah. I mean, that's I guess that would be the sadness for me, is that last year, and sadness is probably overstating it, but last year what Kevin Durant did in that series, I think he earned a lot of goodwill with all Bucks fans, and that's only because you won the series, but you saw how incredible he was, and how stand-up-ish he was too, that he was the one that embraced Giannis afterwards too and told him, go win the championship. And he was just a very easy guy to root for, as much as you hated him during the series because of what he was doing. He was very easy to root for during that series and afterwards. So I think he won over a lot of fans after that. So that to me is not sad, but that's the disappointing part. It's the first time in his career he's been swept, and it comes in the first round, and it comes in a year where he's on a team that entered the season as the odds-on favorite to win the championship. It is just a bizarre sequence of events here this whole year. The Kyrie Irving thing, the Ben Simmons trade, and then the Nets getting swept out of the first round of the playoffs.
I love Kevin Durant. I love watching him play. To me, again, when it's in a playoff series against the Bucks and it goes 7 games and this guy's going nuts, maybe it's not the most enjoyable experience. But against any other team, watching him go to work and have those nights where he can't miss is it's beautiful. It's beautiful to watch. He's a beautiful basketball player to watch. So, yeah, it's a shame that we won't see any more of that, certainly in this postseason. And I guess if you're a Kevin Durant fan, it's a shame moving forward that he might be tied to the same kind of situation. So we'll see how that plays out. But we're going to get to Giannis. Let's get back to the Bucks. So the Khris Middleton situation is what it is. But right now, they've got a game still to take care of against the Bulls. And I want to talk about Giannis because we do this a lot. He's dominant. He gets these numbers. And last night, the story was Grayson Allen and it was Drew Holiday, while Giannis just continued to dominate almost in quiet fashion. First, I want to talk about Prize Picks, which is a daily fantasy option for NBA fans. And if you are looking for that different option, something maybe you haven't heard of before, then you should try the award-winning app Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. I love it, and we know you will too. So basically what you have to do, you pick 2 to 5 players and an over and under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. And it's just you versus the projected numbers. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. Prize Picks is safe and offers fast withdrawals as well. And as I mentioned, the award-winning app is available on both the App Store and Google Play. They've got any prop you can think of, from points scored, rebounds, even steals. For me, I'd be looking at the Giannis numbers. We're going to get to him in a second here, but he's been putting up some ridiculous stat lines. And they've also got football when it comes back as well, soccer, MMA, baseball, all that kind of stuff there. So for a limited time, Prize Picks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all our users. You get $50 free if a player is in your first Prize Picks entry and scores a single point. But you must use the code NBA. This is an exclusive offer for Locked On fans. Sign up today and use code NBA for $50 free if a player in your first Prize Picks entry scores a single point. That's Prize Picks. Go check it out. All right, let's talk Giannis. So it's been an interesting series for him, I think, in terms of navigating the way that he's being defended. I think it's always interesting when smaller guys defend Giannis because, as we've spoken to, they oftentimes get the benefit of the doubt. nothing new for him to see multiple bodies in the paint, but he has become a little bit of a facilitator. The Bucks have benefited from hitting threes, certainly in these last 2 games. Certainly they did in game 4. But overall, when you still look at the numbers at what he's putting up, 27.5 points, 14.5 rebounds, 7 assists per game. He's getting you 2 blocks as well. And he is 53% from the field. Now, the jump shot hasn't really been there. I think particularly in those first 2 games, I thought that he was looking for the jump shot a little too much. I think offensive fouls were obviously a bit of a concern for him, but I do think the last 2 games, and part of it is the Bucks have been hitting threes, and then everything starts to open up. But he's been a little more patient. He's been facilitating. But I will say, when we talk about the officiating, I've said, first of all, that if the officials, because you see it a lot, Bucks fans will say, well, they're manhandling Giannis, they're doing this, they're doing that. I've always said that if the officials are going to let physical play go, then I think it's in the Bucks' favor. Because by nature, I think they're a really, really physical team. And if Drew Holiday's allowed to be physical, and if Javon Carter's allowed to do what he does, Brook Lopez in the paint, then I think it suits the Bucks. I think they like playing physical, so I'm not going to complain about that. I just don't understand why he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt on anything. It's just so crazy to me that you've got a player of this standard, and the charges are one thing. They happen so quickly. Whatever. You would think that he would get more block calls than charges, but they seem very, very quick to call the charge. But the goaltend the other night is just absurd to me. Why, if you're already going to call a foul anyway, then why wouldn't you just call a foul? Have a look. You can have a look at it. Like, why you would automatically assume that it's a goaltend is just very bizarre to me, because Giannis has this lengthy history of these blocks that he clearly gets to. So when it comes to the officiating, there's been a lot of complaints I've seen. But to me, it's just confusing that he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt on anything.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue, and I don't know that this was game 4. It might have been game 3, but one of the games over the weekend, I think part of the issue at times too is it seems like when Giannis does get in those spots, it seems like the first offensive foul he gets is the most egregious on his end, where it's pretty blatant that, yeah, he hooked him, or yeah, he went into his chest, that this is clearly an offensive foul. And that kind of sets the tone where anytime it's on the border, he's not getting the call then going forward. But look, I get that he's incredibly difficult to officiate, and it's the same thing that we said about Shaq. But I mean, at what point does a 2-time MVP and what he did in the finals and everything else, at what point does that come into account? Because we certainly see that with other players. And as hyped as we all were at the start of the season of, wow, they've really taken away all of these grifting fouls and free throws are down and they're not calling these, baiting plays anymore. This is great. That's all kind of gone away as the season, a month into the season is when you kind of started to see an uptick. And now in the playoffs, especially, there's been more of those plays. The Drew Holiday foul that was called on DeMar DeRozan, where what's he supposed to do? He's standing there with his arms upright, and DeRozan comes in his landing zone. So I get that he's difficult to officiate, but I think at times it's all about the first foul that Giannis gets whistled for, and if it is something that's pretty clear, that's just the way it's going to be. And going forward, he's getting those calls against him. I did think it was funny, and look, we're all biased here and wear cream and green colored glasses when we watch the game, but I did think it was funny rewatching game 4, Hubie Brown, just how perplexed he was every single time that Giannis wasn't getting called, and just like agitated that, well, this is an offensive foul. He's going into his chest and he's doing this. Like, at times, I'm not one to think the announcers are cheering for some specific team or the officials are against you, but it was really jarring watching that, not in real time, but after the fact, and hearing Hubie Brown basically begging the officials to whistle Giannis for offensive fouls.
I think at one point he said, yeah, look, Giannis is going to have to learn to change this. And I was like, well, I don't think so. At this point, it's probably beyond that. And by the way, I absolutely love Hubie Brown. Even when he's on the call, I still love listening to him, even if there's, maybe you didn't like that if you're a Bucks fan, but I still enjoyed him being on the call. And one thing I'll say about Hubie, this man, if you see him in person, the first time I saw him in person, which by the way was 3 years ago, I was like, oh my goodness. I'm like, there's no way this guy can still announce basketball games. I mean, it's like, I won't look, whatever. He still does a great job, but I just think it's miraculous that this man is still doing NBA calls, and to me, still doing a decent
It's
job.
incredible. The first time I saw him was at the Bradley Center, and just seeing him in person, it's incredible. That I always loved Hubie Brown, and he's very good friends with John McLaughlin, so that's how I got to meet him and see him there at one of the Bradley Center games. And just to your point, seeing him in person, you're like, holy, how is this guy like leaving the house? This is amazing that he's still doing this at this age.
No, it's impressive, and I think he still does some radio stuff when he's not doing TV as well. But anyway, Hubie, shout out to Hubie. Even though I know, similar to what you said, there was some disputes, I think, from Bucks fans after the last game there. But again, I just think that it's when you look at Giannis and the way that he's had to adjust through this series, and ultimately the reason why you give yourself a chance for any series moving forward is because we've seen Giannis go to the next level. He does need the guys to help him out. He needs Grayson Allen. He needs these other players to hit threes. Pat Connaughton has not been able to hit a shot yet in this series. So ultimately, he needs those other guys for the offense to be able to function. He's missing his favorite pick and roll partner. He's missing Khris Middleton out there, which again will only become more pronounced as the playoffs roll on. But he's doing MVP things.
Well, and I was just going to say real quick, too, I think part of it is also, it seems like when Giannis plays these teams and gets these matchups where there isn't one clear guy or maybe one or two guys that you would say, well, this is who you'd throw on Giannis. That's where these things happen. And, we've all kind of joked about Alex Caruso's best defense is taking the charge, but that's what the Bulls are doing. And those are the teams that seems to kind of get under Giannis's skin, and he gets some of those frustration offensive fouls because there is nobody for him to have that assignment against. And I know Boston can throw a number of guys at him, and you're probably going to see what you're seeing from Alex Caruso. You're probably going to see a lot of that from Marcus Smart too. But they have other guys like Al Horford and Robert Williams are going to see him for large stretches, whereas the Bulls, there's nothing. I mean, Patrick Williams, sure, and Vooch, but those are the areas where Giannis kind of gets a little overly aggressive, and that's where he runs into foul trouble. So still not great to have to contend with that Celtics defense, but I think oddly, that's what you would point to as a Bucks fan and say, well, these are the matchups where it kind of calms down a little bit when there's an actual defender that Giannis is worrying about and not just let's build a wall and let's take charges here.
And a team best plus 17 when he's been on the floor as well. And he's only playing 34.5 minutes now. Obviously, foul trouble contributed to that. There's been some blowouts. You think moving forward in series as they continue to go, that'll be up closer to around the 40 mark if he can stay out of that foul trouble. But what we've seen in this series, even early in the games when it was closer and the Bucks were nowhere near their best, they were able to just, by having him on the floor, able to win those minutes quite considerably. So, look, that's why if you're a Bucks fan right now, it's a luxury to have this man on your team in playoff time, which is the shoe's usually been on the other foot. We're usually in the Bulls scenario where you're like, goodness, can we just hang on? Can we compete in this series here? So we'll see what happens in Game 5. I want to talk about Bobby Portis. Someone in the YouTube comments quite rightly pointed out that this man has continued to develop. We understand that he's a popular player, a fan favorite, does all the things you love on the floor, but over the course of his 24 months with the team, there's been significant development as well. And there is always significant developments in the betting lines for the postseason, which is why you should be checking out betonline.net if you're into that type of thing, because it is your number one source for all your sports betting stats and sports info. Find the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's playoffs and the start of MLB. Justin, you're at the baseball today. Of course, we saw that on Twitter. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs to esports and more. And I believe the Celtics now moving into favoritism in the East, which is interesting. I mean, they've obviously been the form team in the Eastern Conference, or really the NBA, since late January, around that stretch there. They've been incredible, but you can check out the odds. If you like the odds for the Bucks, as people start to lean into the Celtics, then check it out at betonline.net. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. That's BetOnline, where the game starts. So it's 2 p.m. as I'm recording this, and you can see this sunlight that has been gradually coming across my face, which is becoming very uncomfortable, and I'm not really sure what to do about it. I might need a pair of shady rays on at this rate with this sun moving across my face. But speaking of glasses, Bobby Portis. First of all, I mentioned this the other day, but I just think he looks cool. Shout out to Marcus Johnson, Bobby Bifocals. I was trying to think what would be an appropriate nickname for Bobby Portis. I like that one. I think that's great. I know Malika, by the way, I love Malika, friends with her. I've said this before. First NBA game I ever covered when I moved to Milwaukee, sat next to Malika. At that time, she wasn't quite the global superstar that she is at this point in time. Things have really gone from strength to strength for Malika, so shout out to her. But she was using the Bobby Bifocals nickname. Giannis said that he thinks Bobby looks good, but he's averaging a double-double in the series so far, and really these last two games since he moved into the starting lineup. He's put up massive numbers. He's hit shots when they've needed them. Hard not to love Bobby. You speak. I'm going to do something about this light because I can't concentrate.
It is. It's hard not to love Bobby, and game 2, you noticed the absence of Bobby Portis. That the tough thing is it's hard to quantify things like that of the energy that he brings, and his teammates seem to feed off of that. We know for game 2 being at home, we know the home crowd feeds off it, but he's just kind of that energizer guy. And I think this Bulls matchup, he's obviously motivated against the Bulls, being a team that drafted him. And it's a good matchup for Bobby too. So the hope is he can kind of build off of this and take it going into a much, much more difficult second round series, and especially on the defensive end for Bobby Portis. That it's not going to be DeMar DeRozan and Patrick Williams that he's going up against and being able to shoot over. It's going to be a pretty good switchable Boston Celtics team. So it is going to get much more difficult for Bobby, but hopefully this is some type of momentum that he can carry into the second round. And I think too, I think you guys have talked about it throughout the course of the year, but I think the other thing you got to mention with Bobby is credit to Bobby Portis for the work he continues to put in, where he joked last year and was adamant, if you can't say I don't play defense anymore, and how much effort he made on that defensive end, the strides he made there. And I think he's continued to do it. I'm not going to say he's an all-defensive player, but he's certainly gotten better there in the entire time that he has been here. And whether it's out of necessity or whether it's just, Bobby Portis has made some strides there, I don't think we're going to reach the point where Bobby Portis is out of the rotation for a game or two in a series like we saw last year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see moving forward what happens to the starting lineup and if they continue to go big, if they do advance to the next round of the playoffs. On the defensive stuff, I think it's a great point. And watching him this year has reminded me, and this was after the Bucks won the championship last year, and I've brought it up before, but I was talking to Chase Buford, who was on the Bucks coaching staff for that championship run, but also was with Bobby Portis in Chicago. And he said something interesting. I was asking him about Bobby on the defensive end, and he said, he's like, I think you need to keep in mind, this has really been the first situation in his career where he's been specifically taught on a daily basis defense. And that sounds crazy, but when you come to a championship team like the Bucks with the caliber of defensive players that they have, if you don't play any defense, you're just not going to get on the floor. And so I think that the way that the coaching staff, and we know everyone, Bud and Darvingham and Charles Lee, all these guys that preach defense, he has benefited from being around these guys and the players that are willing to help him out. And then in addition to that, in a weird roundabout way, the injury to Brook Lopez has certainly helped Bobby Portis by getting those starters minutes all the way through the season. And last year, we spoke about it. When he was out there on the floor, a lot of the times it was like, all right, Bobby, we'll just play drop coverage. And that's not as simple as it sounds either, because I think it's underrated what Brook Lopez does in terms of his timing, his ability to always be in the exact right position on the floor. But this year, we saw them try and experiment different things that a lot of the times was specific to Bobby being on the floor. So it's kind of, in a weird way, probably helped his development. I'm not sure if anyone's asked him this, but probably helped his development with Brook being out.
Brook being out in the absence of PJ Tucker. It's basically been, Bobby, by necessity, you have to be the switching guy and play the big in some of these lineups. So, yeah, I think it's a good point, especially with the absence of Lopez. But even not having PJ to run some of those switching and hedging at the top of the key. So I think those are all things that have added to it. And again, like we said, obviously the biggest is we talk about it all the time with Giannis, but Bobby Portis doing the same thing and working on that aspect of his game and putting in that work in the offseason and in practice and during the season.
And the other point is that he does, and this is, I don't think it matters so much in the regular season, but we've seen that it does matter in the postseason. He's got an edge that, quite simply, not a lot of guys do on the Bucks. That's just not their personality in terms of Drew and Khris and even Giannis to an extent. He kind of just plays. He's not oftentimes getting into it with guys where Bobby Portis will fire up the crowd. He will get that momentum in home games. He's willing to stand up and he will give a hard foul if he needs to do, which I do think is important. I think the Bucks are a tough team. I think they're a super physical team, but they don't have too many personalities like Bobby Portis, which I think is where they benefited a lot from PJ Tucker last year. And probably this year it's good for them to have Bobby Portis in the locker room, a guy that really seems to always stay positive and bring these guys together. Anyway, the main point is that it's very easy to see why Bobby is generally loved wherever he goes.
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing is, seeing Bobby Portis in the goggles, it was like a dream come true. And I think we all were like, oh, when you saw what the injury was, like, does this mean he's going to have to wear goggles? And kind of hoping for it. And we finally got to see it in game 3. But also, Bobby Portis is every single one of us. When you look out there and you see the guy wearing undershirts, goggles, and a headband, like that's all of us in rec league basketball.
It's true, but you're not looking anywhere near as cool as Bobby. Let's be clear about that. All right, we'll wrap this up. One thing I will say, Bobby bifocals, I actually originally was going with Bloodshot Bobby. So I don't know. I haven't seen that one out there too often. I don't think anyone's picked it up, but Bloodshot Bobby to me also works very well. So Bloodshot Bobby buckets. Yeah, that's what I'm going to continue to roll with. But again, shout out to Marcus. We love it. 6:30 tip-off. This game, by the way, that was announced today. So if you missed that, Wednesday night, 6:30 p.m. Central Time, 5:04. And we'll be back for a podcast tomorrow, though. But for now, for Justin and myself, we'll leave it there. We'll catch you guys tomorrow.